I want to take you to a lonely speck on the Arctic Ocean's edge, where wines tell stories. Wrangel Island lies far off Siberia's coast, a wedge of tundra, gravel beaches, and low rugged mountains. Here, the last woolly mammoth survived long after their mainland cousins had vanished into ancient history. As a science communicator studying Ice Age fossils, I still feel wonder each time Wrangel's name appears. On Wrangel, the Ice Age didn't end when our calendars claim; it lingered in stubborn, living form. While mammoths disappeared from Eurasia and North America, a small island population endured until 4,000 years ago. They lived alongside pyramid builders in Egypt and early farmers tending rivers half a world away. Picture them crossing frost-burnished slopes under summer skies that never darken, pushing through willow scrub and sedges. In winter, they shook snow from shaggy coats beneath pale light striped with glowing ice crystals. They weren't giants out of time, but neighbors adapting to a changed world, descendants of steppe-roaming herds. As sea levels rose after the last glacial maximum, broad plains became seafloor and land bridges drowned. Wrangel was left isolated, a refuge for perhaps only a few hundred stranded mammoths in total. For a while, isolation was a blessing. No cave lions or saber-toothed cats prowled the island. People, if any came in early Holocene centuries, were rare and passing, not settled and predatory. The island gave grasses, forbs, and driftwood, streams from ridges, wines that cleared snow for foraging. Yet isolation is a test. Small populations gamble each year against weather, hunger, or sudden disease. Reading expedition notes, I underlined the silence: no trees for shelter, only horizon and sea winds. That silence makes your heartbeat part of the weather, sharpening thoughts about survival and endurance. Here is where science braids with empathy. The data become stories about persistence against narrowing odds. Radiocarbon dates from bones, tusks, and hair cluster in this late survival window, telling their timeline clearly. We match those dates to sediment layers holding pollen grains and plant fragments, mapping vegetation over centuries. Isotope signatures in collagen reveal what they ate and drank as snowpacks rose and rivers shifted. Tusk tips still weather from bluffs, molar plates crack from freeze-thaw, each groove a record of meals. I picture a young mammoth watching an elder dredge a stream bank, testing each trunkful for sweetness or salt. When teaching about Wrangel, I start here to reset time extinction as slope, not single moment. A small herd kept walking that slope, leaving marks faint enough to vanish unless you truly looked. Nadia, a wildlife artist, once drew the wind's sound while our ship pushed through pancake ice. Her lines felt like history's breath, the warming world's exhale, animals adjusting as best they could. On Wrangel, mammoths survived deep into that warming, while myths elsewhere recalled them as thunder beasts. The island kept its counsel, holding the last herd in a circle of water and shifting seasons. When we docked, the air smelled of salt, lichens, and cold stone. Boots crunched on driftwood beaches. I carried a notebook and a question. How can hundreds endure millennia, and what ends them? We suspected no single villain, just climate nudges, chance events, and the quiet math of small populations. Science is a team sport. We brought paleontologists, geneticists, and indigenous storytellers to listen first. It felt right to let the island set our tempo, as kin rather than specimen or site. Back home, the detective work began in quiet rooms with freezers and sequencers where Wrangel tusk bone powder waited. The past braided into fragments of DNA, tiny tubes holding clues from an island's last surviving mammoth herd. Myra, a paleogeneticist from coastal Alaska, said she feels nervous every time she opens an ancient genome sample. Ancient genomes are like snowflakes, delicate, unique, and easy to lose if you breathe too hard. From those fragments, we rebuilt long stretches of the mammoth genome, comparing them to older mainland mammoths and elephants. The pattern was elegant and troubling. Wrangel's mammoths were distinct, shaped by isolation, with fewer genetic variants. Their DNA bore long identical blocks from inbreeding and a growing load of mutations affecting smell, reproduction, and hair. We call this genetic drift and, when relentless, mutational meltdown, the slow accumulation of harmful changes over generations. In small herds, chance is powerful. A useful variant can vanish if its carrier never produces calves. A harmful variant can spread if it rides in a bull who thrives for unrelated reasons in the herd. This didn't mean Wrangel's mammoths were doomed from birth. The island offered enough food and water for centuries. But genetics warned of narrowing options, frayed scent communication signals, and male fertility challenges in other mammals. These matter when a population's future depends on a few breeding adults each season, year after year. I tell students, it's like a library after a storm. Shelves remain, but the catalog has gaps. You can still read and learn, but resilience thins when the next storm inevitably blows in. To check DNA against lived experience, we studied teeth. Mammoth molars record diet, stress, and water sources. It makes sense for an island with icy shores, but hints at vulnerability to rain, drought, or ice. Radiocarbon dating showed mammoths lasted nearly 6,000 years after the Ice Age ended elsewhere. That's enough time for cultures to rise and fall, languages to change, coastlines to redraw across the globe. It's also enough time for chance to test many doors. Harsh winters, good summers, unpredictable recoveries. Each population drop shrank gene shuffling, and the safety net of genetic variation protecting the herd. In the field, we felt that tension one night our generator failed, fog rolling over the beach. Myra laughed wearily and said this is what small populations endure, no redundancy in critical systems. If the one good cow doesn't calve, if the one brave bull falls through ice, plans unravel. That's not drama, she said. It's arithmetic. Wrangel's mammoths lived with this math for generations. We also searched for human traces. Archaeology suggests people arrive late, visiting or settling in small groups. I imagine a child on the beach spotting a mammoth across tidal flats, both wary and curious. There are no villains here, only added threads, firewood piles, dogs, and paths shifting animal behavior subtly. Coastal hunters today remind us, the first pressure is rarely the last. Pressures stack until balance breaks. On Wrangel, climate, chance, genes, and people stack slowly, reducing the herd's margin for error over centuries. Still, they had agency, choosing routes, teaching calves, pressing trunks to ice for the sound of water. They broke through frozen creeks to drink, solving problems until the very end of their long story. In that effort lies the most human part, adapting relentlessly until, one day, the options are gone. The final act on Wrangel Island was quiet, and that quiet makes it hard to see clearly. The last dates cluster around 4,000 years ago, give or take decades, and then abruptly stop. No ash layer signals a volcano. No mass bone bed marks a single catastrophic event ending their story. Instead, we see a taper, like a candle burning down, and pressures that together close the mammoth's chapter. In Arctic winters, storms can glaze the ground with ice, sealing food beneath a rock-hard rind. A single year like this can starve animals. 2 or 3 in a row can crush a small herd. Summer can also be cruel. Freshwater systems are fragile on low islands, shrinking streams in warm, dry years. Mineral concentrations can rise, changing water's taste, and limiting safe drinking sources for a stranded herd. Then humans arrive sporadically or settling, bringing fire, dogs, and curiosity into a delicate ecological equation. I imagine a final cow, ribs showing after winter, leading her calf along a brackish creek's edge. She stands listening to the wind hold its breath, choosing between imperfect, narrowing survival options. Ancestors once crossed ridges, circled bays, waited for change, but those rules now brought fewer wins. Nature's endings often come not as cliffs, but staircases, steps growing closer until nothing remains. When our team finished its report, I took a copy to an elder who welcomed us before. He read silently, closed the folder, and said, "The land teaches through repeating small lessons until we listen." Wrangel's lesson is that survival requires more than strength. It needs diversity, slack, and time. Modern conservation talks of corridors, population size, and the insurance of genetic variation. On a remote island, mammoths had already written that syllabus long before conservation science existed. This lesson is not abstract. Island birds and foxes live where one storm can erase nests and burrows. In rivers, tiny porpoises dodge nets in a shrinking range that erodes each breeding season. On mountaintops, pikas climb toward cooler air until there is nowhere left to climb at all. Each case echoes Wrangel. When numbers fall and options narrow, chance grows sharp teeth. The good news: chance can be tamed by design. Larger protected areas and healthy watersheds matter. Locally guided stewardship adds slack so species can absorb bad years and still recover. When teaching conservation students, I ask, what slack exists in your home landscapes right now? Is there an extra meadow to keep wild? Seasonal flows to restore? Or traditional knowledge to keep fires cool? Wrangel becomes a map of loss and of how not to repeat that loss again. I carry this story for another reason: it reminds us dignity does not depend on winning. The last mammoths lived full lives learning, teaching, caring within a shrinking circle of possibility. They kept choosing until choice itself disappeared. Integrity can be doing the next right thing in hardship. On a later trip, Nadia drew the same shoreline with a lighter hand, tracing memory more than fact. She added to distant silhouettes on a ridge, not as ghosts, but to check the land scale. Later, in her studio, she painted fine flank hairs catching light like dry grass in autumn. In the lab, Myra messaged late at night, finding a fragment that filled a chromosome gap perfectly. We all say the same thing in our own ways. We see you, even across time. If you watch this far from the Arctic, you can still stand inside Wrangel's lesson today. Ask what would happen if your animals faced a hard years in a row without relief. Then imagine what support would keep them afloat. That's the bridge between mammoths and modern mornings. For those dreaming of revival, of bringing mammoths back, I offer this boundary with care. Let fascination fuel care for the living first. Study the past to sharpen judgment and guide action. Honor by protecting species carrying ancient lineages forward in our own time. Woolly mammoths painted the Arctic with presence for hundreds of thousands of years without pause. On Wrangel, a few kept the brush moving long after the world changed around them. Their last strokes remained visible in bone ledgers and buried pollen beneath the island's thin soils. When the line finally stopped, the canvas remained snowlit, wind-carved, waiting for us to paint anew. If we answer with belonging for caribou, sea ducks, and people who name the weather mammoths have helped us. Their endurance teaches the art of staying. Their absence warns of the cost of forgetting. And in that quiet, with waves knocking at rounded stones, a lesson rises clear as northern light. Small things add up, and time, given space, can be generous again in shaping the future.